The air inside the church that morning was thick with perfume, whispers, and hypocrisy. My father's casket gleamed at the front, surrounded by white lilies, his favorite. I sat in the back pew, clutching a crumpled tissue, trying to hold back tears that refused to come. Maybe I was too numb. Maybe I was too angry. Across the aisle, she stood, Vanessa Blake, the woman who had stolen my father's attention, his affection, and now, apparently, his fortune. She wore a black silk dress that looked more suited for a gala than a funeral, a diamond bracelet glinting each time she dabbed her eyes. Her performance was perfect, the heartbroken lover. The crowd believed it, too. People whispered, she was so good to him, he adored her, poor thing. Poor thing. I wanted to scream. She'd been his mistress for 3 years, everyone knew it, yet here she was, front and center, as if she were the widow. When the ceremony ended, I approached the coffin, my heart pounding. Golby, Dad, I whispered, my throat tight. I hope you knew how much I loved you, even when you were too blinded to see it. As I turned to leave, Vanessa intercepted me with a honeyed smile that didn't reach her eyes. Emily, she sighed smoothly, your father wanted peace between us. Her hand grazed my arm like she owned me. He made sure you'll be comfortable. Her tone was so patronizing that for a second, I thought it measured her. Comfortable? I echoed. She tilted her head. Well, let's just say, he knew how to take care of those who truly cared for him. Then she leaned closer, lowering her voice. Don't make this harder for yourself. The will's clear. I froze. The will? He had made no mention of it to me. I had assumed, like any daughter would, that his estate would pass to me, not to the woman who had appeared in his life halfway through his 60s. A week later, my worst fears came true. I was called to the lawyer's office for the reading of the will. Vanessa arrived in a designer suit, her lawyer trailing behind like an obedient shadow. When the official document was read aloud, it was like hearing a death sentence twice. To my companion, Vanessa Blake, I leave the entirety of my estate, assets, and company shares. My name was never mentioned. Not once. I sat there frozen while Vanessa pretended to wipe a tear. Then she turned to me with a look of false sympathy. I'm sure this is difficult for you, she murmured. But your father trusted me to carry on his legacy. Rage burned through my veins, but I sighed nothing. Instead, I gathered my things and walked out, my ears ringing. By the time I reached the mansion that had been my home since childhood, I found security guards at the gate. Miss Emily One sighed awkwardly. Miss Blake instructed that, you're not allowed entry anymore. My jaw dropped. You mean Vanessa? She doesn't own this house. The guard looked away. According to the will, she does now. And just like that, I was homeless. Standing outside those iron gates, suitcase in hand, I watched as Vanessa's silhouette appeared at the window, calm, smug, victorious. For the first time in my life, I understood what it felt like to lose everything. But beneath my grief, a stubborn voice whispered, something's not right. My father may have been flawed, but he wasn't cruel. He would never abandon me completely. Not without a reason. And that night, as I sat in a cheap model room staring at the ceiling, I made myself a promise, I would find out the truth, no matter how deep veins I had berated. The next few weeks were a blur of confusion, anger, and relentless searching. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Vanessa's smug smile. The world thought I'd lost everything, but deep inside, I couldn't shake any thought, my father wouldn't do this to me. He was many things, stubborn, proud, sometimes distant, but he loved me. That I knew for sure. So I went back to the mansion on a night. I waited until the guards changed shifts and sneaked around the back through the rose garden. Every corner of that house whispered memories, birthday balloons still faintly marked on the ceiling of the living room, the faint scent of my mother's old perfume, the echo of laughter from a time before Vanessa arrived. I slipped into my father's study through a side door. The room smelled like old books and cigar smoke. His mahogany desk still stood there, massive and intimidating, stacked with papers and files. Vanessa probably hadn't even touched this place, she was too busy redecorating everything in gold. I began going through drawers, tacked files, letters, old business contracts, until my eyes fell on something odd. The bottom drawer had a lock. My heart skipped. I remembered when I was a little girl, he used to keep important things in that only drawer. I searched every corner of the desk until I found a tiny brass key taped underneath. My hands trembled as I turned it. The drawer slid open with a creak. Inside was a small stack of envelopes, a faded photograph of me as a child sitting on his lap, and on a letter sealed with wax. The handwriting made my breath catch, his. The envelope read, "For Emily, only if they try to erase you." I froze. My pulse pounded in my ears. With shaking hands, I broke the seal and pulled out several pages, each carefully written in my father's bold handwriting. The first line nearly made me drop the paper. "If you are reading this, it means someone has tried to take what is rightfully yours." The letter went on to explain how he had made a new will, updated only weeks before his death. He'd grown suspicious of Vance's behavior, of his sudden interest in his finances, and had quietly arranged for a new lawyer to draft a proper document, only that left everything to me. He even mentioned where the document was kept, in the hidden drawer below the study cabinet. My legs went weak. I knelt down, pushing aside the rugs, and found a false panel under the cabinet. Beneath it lay a thin envelope, dusty but intact. Inside, the real will. Signed, sealed, and dated. I stared at it, disbelief turning to tears. "You brilliant man," I whispered, clutching it to my chest. "You knew she'd try something." The next morning, I took the document straight to my father's oldest friend, McClark, a retired lawyer who had helped my father start his company decades ago. His eyes widened as he examined the pages under a magnifying glass. This is legitimate," he sighed quietly. "It's notarized and dated after the version Vanessa presented in court. Emily, this changes everything." He looked up at me, a rare spark in his usually calm eyes. "We can challenge her claim immediately. But you must be ready, Vanessa won't go down quietly." I nodded, determination replacing fear. For the first time since his death, I felt my father beside me, guiding me. That night, I stared out the model window, holding the will tightly in my hand. Tomorrow, I would face Vanessa in court. She thought she had taken everything, but she was about to learn that truth always finds its way home. The courtroom was silent except for the soft hum of the ceiling fan and the steady click of the judge's pen. Every seat was filled. Reporters, lawyers, distant relatives, everyone wanted to witness the final showdown between the mistress and the daughter. Vanessa sat at the front, flawless as ever, dressed in a tailored cream suit that screamed confidence. Her crimson lips curved in a faint smile as if the verdict was already hers. She whispered something to her attorney and lodged softly, a sound that made my blood boil. I sat on the opposite side, my hands clasped tightly together. My father's real will rested in the lawyer's briefcase beside me. I could feel its presence, like a heartbeat. For weeks, I had lived with fear, anger, and grief, but now, I felt only resolve. The judge entered, adjusted his glasses, and began the proceedings. Vanessa's lawyer spoke first, reading excerpts from the fake will, painting her as the devoted partner who had stood by my father until his last breath. Every word was like poison. Blake, the lawyer sighed dramatically, wished to entrust his empire to the woman who cared for him when no one else did. I clenched my jaw. My lawyer, McClark, leaned toward me and whispered, "Patience. Let him finish." Finally, the judge turned to me. "Miss Emily Blake, do you wish to present any evidence to the contrary?" I rose slowly, every eye in the courtroom on me. Vanessa smirked, folding her arms. "These should be good," she muttered under her breath. "Your Honor," I sighed, trying to keep my voice steady, "I have in my possession a document, the real will of my late father." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Vanessa's head snapped toward me, her expression faltering for the first time. "What nonsense," she began, but I continued. "This document was written and signed after the order Miss Blake submitted. It was kept in a sealed drawer, along with a letter addressed to me in my father's handwriting, confirming his intentions." I handed the envelope to the bailiff, who delivered it to the judge. Vanessa's lawyer jumped up. "Objection. These could be fabricated." The judge silenced him with a glare and began to examine the document. Every second felt like an eternity. I could see Vanessa fidgeting, her composure cracking. After a long pause, the judge looked up. "This will is authentic. The signatures, witnesses, and notary marks are verified. The date is indeed after the previously submitted will." The room erupted in whispers. Vanessa's face drained of color. "That's impossible," she cried. "He promised," he sighed. The judge's voice cut through her panic. "Miss Blake, it appears you submitted a fraudulent will." The court hereby recognized this newly presented document as the valid and final testament of Mr. Jonathan Blake. Tears blurred my vision as his next words fell like thunder. "All assets, estates, and company holdings are to be transferred to his daughter, Emily Blake, effective immediately." For the first time, I allowed myself to breathe. Vanessa stood frozen, her mouth opening and closing with no sound. When I turned toward her, she met my eyes, but the arrogance was gone. What remained was disbelief and fear. I stepped closer, my voice calm. "You thought you had taken everything, Vanessa. But my father built his empire on truth. And truth doesn't die, not even with him." She sighed nothing. The guards escorted her out as reporters swarmed the hall. Cameras flashed, questions followed, but I walked past them, silent, steady. Outside, the winter sun broke through the clouds. I looked up, clutching the will to my chest. "You did protect me, Dad," I whispered. "You always did." And for the first time since he died, I felt peace, not the kind that comes from victory, but the kind that comes from knowing justice had finally spoken.